All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Jing Rui from Venture Seed Consulting. I've been doing go-to-market consultancy for companies to Southeast Asia for the last 3-4 years already. We have a wonderful team based in Indonesia that helps to run a lot of the local operations. If anybody ever asks me, what is the secret to go-to-market, or how do I open a market from 0 to 1, I always run through my favorite playbook, which we've been sort of doing the last 3 or 4 years. It's gone through a few rounds of iteration. The first thing that anybody believes or anybody that lands in Southeast Asia thinks is we're going straight for customers. I see this a lot with, big companies that are hungry for revenue. More often than not, they've actually just raised another series or another round of fundraising, and there are pressures to deliver on that round. And what happens is we have a very unique situation where they have zero presence, zero marketing, and essentially no clear footprint, but are expected to deliver within a 6-month, 1-year time frame. Now, if any business owner out there knows, to close your first deal in 6 months, especially in this region, you must be absolutely out of your mind. You haven't even done a very clear product market fit. You don't know the kind of challenges that companies or consumers face here, and most importantly, you're not very clear on your positioning. That's where I think the first thing you need to spend the time to do is a lot of localization, is a very clear understanding of the problems, and more importantly, the personas in the region. A lot of people mistake that, we'll buy products on value. We actually buy a lot on problem statements, pain points, and relationships. And those 3 things come in very harmoniously together. You can't have one without the other. And I'll explain why. If you want to get a problem statement, and it's my first time meeting you, am I obliged to tell you the top 3 challenges that my business is facing? Am I obliged to share with you the kind of decision-making power I have when I don't know who you are, where you're from, or what you want from me? A lot of people make that mistake of coming to Southeast Asia without the intent to build the relationship. They just want the revenue. They want to know the problem statements. And I always emphasize repeatedly, build relationships. Spend the time to understand the market first and make friends. Once people are comfortable, you'll start to hear the problem statements and you'll get to understand their personas, their decision-making powers a lot better. Once you have those relationships, it's now time to accelerate on them. And I'm now going into the playbook that I talked about. Now that it's been very clear that you've established your product market fit, you know the problem statements, you've maybe even gotten 1 or 2 prospective interests in the market, we're now going to dive into the sort of 3 segments of go-to-market that I've identified. And I work very closely with Colin from Scalar to conceptualize, strategize, and operationalize this. The first portion, we'll be talking about entry and landing, meaning getting your first 3 customers in Southeast Asia. Then we'll be talking about exponential growth. Once you've landed your first 3, how do you then start to build for scale? And then lastly, we're talking about scaling. We're talking about building it and replicating it in other countries. Because what a lot of people mistake in Southeast Asia is that what I do in Indonesia can be replicated from Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. That is completely false because each market has their own unique sets of communities, decision makers, hierarchies, and regulations that all of us have to navigate together. But I'm going to go back to the start to talk about your first 0 to 1 and landing your first 3 customers in Southeast Asia. When you've gotten the interest, you understand the problem statements, you've essentially built together material which you can use to engage people in Southeast Asia. You're now going to go into market, spend the time and invest the effort to get to know people better, share about your product, share what you do, how you're solving their very critical problem statements. But when you're going to do this, one of the biggest points of resistance you're going to get is, if I'm interested to work with you, what's your local presence? And more importantly, why is the trust there? If I'm talking to, example, an Australian or someone from the US that's based in Indonesia, that's coming to Indonesia to sell these products, you're 20 hours away by flight or sometimes 8 hours away by flight. Locally, if my systems go down or there's issues with the product, you're not going to be able to provide a service level that makes me comfortable to work with you. And that's where the partnership model comes in. Partnerships help to address and localize you in Southeast Asia without having to build your own sales team and deploy capital to run your go-to-market operations. And it's not about having 20, 30, 40 partners. It's that first 5 who you work very closely with. You invest a lot of time and effort to build the relationship with them, to allow them to understand your product, the pain points that customers are facing, and how these can be addressed through your product, providing them with the support and being very flexible on the pricing because it's still a very price-sensitive region. This helps you to alleviate a lot of the points of resistance that you're going to face in Southeast Asia. And with that, you're going to find conversations are a lot smoother when you're saying, hey, these are the problem statements that I'm able to address. Here's how my solution does it. Here's how we're better than everyone else in the market. Not only that, we also have a local partner that's able to support you, provide you the service level that you are looking for, and more importantly, build that relationship and that comfort. And now that you've landed your first 3 logos, we're going to be focusing on the next part, which is scaling up and really helping you to realize the market opportunities here in Southeast Asia. The mistake a lot of companies make at this point in time is this is where they build their sales team. They shift to a full KPI model, and it becomes a very metrics-based game when running their APAC operations and their revenue operations. That is important, and that's how you should run the business correctly. But when you forget about your relationships, the problem statements and the personas, the anchors that got you here in the first place, that's what will really derail a lot of the opportunities that you found and that you've created from nailing your first 3 logos in Southeast Asia. One of the biggest concepts that I've recently been sharing with some of my partners and very close friends is this concept called social capital efficiency. It means how do you build very close, very deep relationships at scale, especially for myself as an individual founder. We need to be able to manage all these critical relationships with all our stakeholders very well. But I only have 24 hours a day and 365 days a year. Social capital efficiency does not mean prioritizing people or saying that just because this guy gives me more money, he's going to be a lot better. Social capital efficiency is about understanding which relationships are going to be reciprocal, that people see the value in the relationships and they're willing to build it with you. Focus on those where you really do see the win-win. There are lots of people in this region, whilst yes, we are very relationship driven, that are here to make a quick buck off of you. Be very sensitive. Understand agendas very well. And more importantly, when you find those hidden gems that are willing to invest in you and willing to build that relationship with you, be very quick to capture that. Spend lots of time. Be very clear in what you're willing to commit and how much you appreciate them and how far you're willing to take this relationship to go with them. Because if they see that, they're going to be even more willing to reciprocate with you. Another way to look at this stage is really about where are the focus segments? Where are the repeatable opportunities? Where are the repeatable segments that face the same problem statements that your first 3 logos are facing? You're going to need to do market research, but I like to look at working with communities in Southeast Asia, whether it be the MDEC or in Indonesia, the CIO community Axion, run by the wonderful gentleman Pak Ray Sugiarto. These are the communities that will get you the access, not because they know everybody in town. Well, that's of course how they get it done. But more importantly, they are close and they are very well connected to the communities that you want to tap into. A community-based approach provides a very comfortable area to build relationships, where it's really not transactional. Now that you've scaled up, you're probably seeing anywhere from 5, 10 to 15 accounts, hopefully even 20. This is the point that you've probably had maybe a 2 to 3 packs sales team in the region. Maybe you're doing really well in 1 or 2 markets. And the next question that maybe your investors or you, in terms of your aspirations, have for the region is, let's go at scale. The biggest challenge at this point would be the ability to manage local teams. I'll give you a very great example of this challenge. Today is Friday. You're coming into office at 12 p.m., but where is the rest of your team? They're actually out for Friday prayers in Indonesia because that is the culture. And we have to be respectful and mindful of these cultures and learn how to manage our teams especially if we've pivoted to that KPI or revenue-focused model where we're looking at numbers every day. That is just within Indonesia. Now you repeat that for Malaysia, and then you go to Thailand where they have their own set of public holidays, and you have all these challenges and all these localizations that you need to learn how to manage. But I hardly ever tell people that these are challenges, because the way you need to approach it, and when you want to really scale up in Southeast Asia, is you need to go local and stay local. But don't try to clump Southeast Asia or ASEAN as one market. They are never one market. Some of the most successful multinational corporations in Southeast Asia have country heads for each country, because that is the extent that they have to go to manage each geography. And you have to take that approach. Having a country manager to lead Thailand for that first 1 year, ramping up, that is critical and quintessential if you want to be able to make it. Thinking that someone who successfully opened the Singapore market is able to duplicate the same success for Vietnam is the least likely outcome possible. There are many success cases, don't get me wrong, but it is more likely that those Singaporeans were willing to invest the time in a relationship to really go there and be there. They themselves have had some encounters or understanding of the Vietnamese culture. But my advice is to go local and stay local. Hire and groom an outstanding local team. For example, an Indonesian country head should be run by an Indonesian. The Vietnamese division should be run by a Vietnamese, because only they know how to manage their own local counterparts and their own local accounts. They've been embedded in the culture, something that we will struggle to do. I've been going to Indonesia for 5 years, and I still struggle to catch on to the slangs and the diversity packed into just Jakarta alone. Can you imagine going to Medan and Surabaya or Makassar, where they have their own unique set of cultures? That, combined with our lack of understanding, not even from within this region, because I'm Singaporean, already puts you at a very strong disadvantage. But the biggest thing that you're not willing to let go of is trust. How willing are you to trust a local Vietnamese, Thai, or Indonesian, or Malaysian even, to run that local operations? You need to be willing to trust and empower, and you need to be okay to fail and make mistakes in hiring. That is a reiterative process. But to go local and stay local is the only way, sincerely, to be able to manage a Southeast Asian operations. In conclusion, what I've shared today is very much a simplified playbook of how if I were to work with you, or anybody would advise you coming to Southeast Asia, would want to tell you to come to market. Start by investing the time to understand the market. Don't talk about your features or what makes you better than everybody. Focus on the relationships, the problem statements, and the personas. When you're coming here, you want to come here in the most efficient way possible. Work with partners, because they provide you with the local context, the localization, and the access. As you scale up and you've hit your first 3 logos with those partners, you're now going to want to focus on working with communities, deepening your relationship with your partners, and even working or building your own sales team. And as you realize that you have a captive market, you've hit some form of product market fit, you have anywhere from 10 to 15 customers in market, and you're thinking, I'm going to set up an operations for the whole of APAC or ASEAN or Southeast Asia, don't forget, it is not one homogeneous market. Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, they have their own unique market. And that means you got to go local and stay local. And in all this, do not ever neglect the importance of cultural nuances and that relationship building, because those are the anchors to helping you gain a foothold in this market. Thank you very much for listening to me. I'm Jing Rui from Venture Seed Consulting. We help international companies expand to Southeast Asia at scale. We run essentially a 3-month to 1-year program helping you to build your product market fit here in Southeast Asia. Stay tuned to watch the most Australian Singaporean talk to the most Singaporean Australian ever, La, as Colin would say. And I look forward very much to having the fireside chat with him. And shout out to Media Shock for the awesome recording studio. It's awesome here.